Welcome to episode 76 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. It's January 15, 1958. We're at Windsor Park in Belfast, Northern Ireland versus Italy, and it is an all-decider. Italy will qualify for the World Cup with a draw. Northern Ireland need to win. And what makes this day historic is not just the scoreline, though that is sensational. Northern Ireland 2, Italy 1. It is what the result represents. A home nation, in its first non-home championship World Cup qualification campaign, knocks out one of Europe's grand powers, the two-time world champions, for the first time in Italy's history. So today we'll do three things. We'll set the qualification context, UEFA's early era, a new structure, and why Northern Ireland are even in a group with Italy and Portugal in the first place. We'll walk through Group 8, step by step, including the Battle of Belfast match that was meant to be a qualifier, became a friendly, and nearly became something worse. And then we'll land on January 15 itself, how the match unfolded, why it mattered immediately, and what it meant afterward. Northern Ireland's World Cup run in Sweden, and Italy's shock in a year they simply weren't supposed to miss. Let's dig in. UEFA is founded in 1954, and by the time qualification for the 1958 World Cup arrives, European qualifying is no longer a loose patchwork. It becomes 9 three-team groups, home and away, and group winner goes through. For the home nations, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, that matters. Before, the home championship had doubled as qualification in certain cycles. Now it doesn't. So the 4 home nations are separated into different qualifying groups, and it means something, sitting in discomfort, in a new way. For the first time, they have to qualify the continental way. Not by familiar neighbours, but by beating heavyweight strangers. Northern Ireland are placed in Group 8 with Portugal and Italy, and Italy is supposed to win it. Italy arrived in the 1950s with a resume that still carries pre-war authority. World Cup winners in 1934 and 38, Olympic champions in 1936, and Central European International Cup winners. They also arrive with a specific post-war habit, using the Oriundi pipeline, players born abroad, often in South America, who become eligible for Italy. This Italian squad contains 2 men who have won the World Cup with Uruguay in 1950. Alcides Chico Ghiggia, the winger who scored the goal that silenced the Maracanã. Juan Alberto Schiaffino, the elegant brain of that Uruguay team. And the coach, Alfredo Foni. And the assumption around Europe is clear. Italy should navigate this group. But Northern Ireland in 1957 are not a pushover. They have Danny Blanchflower as captain, Tottenham's conductor. They have Harry Gregg in goal. They have Jimmy McIlroy, a Burnley playmaker with bite. And they have Wilbur Cush, a Leeds United captain. And they prove their level beyond the qualifiers. In November 1957, in a British home championship match, Northern Ireland beat England 3-2 at Wembley, the first win over England since 1927, and the first on English soil since 1914. This is not a minnow story. It is a disciplined, battle-hardened side in the middle of a genuine peak. Now to Group 8, the 6 games that create the stage. It all begins in Lisbon in January 1957. Portugal 1, Northern Ireland 1. Billy Bingham, who later won the English League with Everton, as well as became national team manager for Northern Ireland, scored first, before Portugal equalised. It becomes a key detail in how this group plays out, because that draw in Lisbon ends up being the only away point anyone takes in the group. Then April 25, 1957 in Rome. Italy 1, Northern Ireland 0. The goal is early, a bullet of a direct free kick by Sergio Serrato after 3 minutes. Despite both Danny Blanchflower and Jamie McIlroy hammering shots from the distance against the crossbar, Northern Ireland leave with the expected result, a narrow loss. Nothing disgraceful, but the favourites remain favourites. Then 6 days later in Belfast, Northern Ireland 3, Portugal 0. This is the first time the group tilts. Northern Ireland aren't merely hanging around, they're taking command at home. And famously, up 2-0 and in control, and after Portugal's Cabrita had handled the ball, Jamie McIlroy stepped up to take a penalty. He merely tapped the ball to Danny Blanchflower, who scored, but the Scottish referee Phillips disallowed the goal and ordered a retake. McIlroy dutifully converted the penalty the conventional way. And then came the shock. On May 26, 1957, in Lisbon, Portugal 3, Italy 0. Portugal scored through Manuel Vazquez, then laid through Teixeira and Matateu. Italy's captain, Boniperti, missed 2 chances in front of an open goal, and now the group is wide open, and the schedule loads the drama into December. Italy are due in Belfast on December 4, and then they host Portugal on December 22nd. It's set up for a simple finish. If Italy steady themselves, a draw in Belfast plus a win against Portugal in Milan, they'll have qualified. But you already know it. This is football, and it has a mind of its own. December 4, 1957 is supposed to be the biggest match in Northern Ireland's modern football life. Windsor Park is packed, 53,000 people on the terraces. Workers have taken half days. The crowd has paid for World Cup qualifier. And then the referee doesn't arrive. Istvan Zolt, Hungarian referee, stage manager at the National Theatre, a teetotaler, is stranded by thick London fog. Northern Ireland and Italy are both there. The crowd is there. The day has been built. So the two federations agree to play a friendly rather than a qualifier, and what follows becomes infamous. A match played with competitive hatred in front of an almost 60,000 strong crowd that feels cheated once the changed status of the match is announced over the loudspeakers. Italy is furious at the hostility, and Northern Ireland furious at the downgrade. It ends 2-2, with Wilbur Cush scoring both Northern Ireland goals. It also becomes violent. There are punches thrown, literally, brutal tackles, an 83rd minute red card for the Italians, and a mood where the crowd and players feed each other's anger. And when the whistle goes, supporters invade the pitch. Danny Blanchflower's response becomes a captain's defining moment. He orders his players to escort Italy off the pitch, a human corridor, protection by presence, while police deal with the crowd. The match is remembered as the Battle of Belfast, and it matters for one reason beyond the chaos. Had it been an official qualifier, that 2-2 draw would have been exactly what Italy came for, and in retrospect, would have put Italy on a flight to Sweden. Instead, it becomes a kind of violent rehearsal for the match that actually counts. Italy return home bruised, physically and reputationally, and they do the next thing favorites do. They win. December 22nd in Milan, Italy 3, Portugal 0. Now the table is set. Italy top the group on 4 points. Northern Ireland are behind on 3. Portugal are finished. So on this day, January 15, 1958, we are back at Windsor Park again. Referee Zolt arrived in the days prior, and this time it's an official World Cup qualifier. Italy just needs a draw. Northern Ireland must win. And Northern Ireland start like a team that understands exactly what this moment costs, with Danny Blanchflower directing and playing at the highest technical level. In the 13th minute, Peter McParland drives up the ball on left wing, passes to Jamie McIlroy, whose shot from 20 yards leaves no chance for Italy's Bugatti in goal, 1-0. Then, at the half-hour mark, Danny Blanchflower wanders on the left side, finds Leeds United's captain Wilbur Cush with a long pass. Bugatti clears the first shot, but Cush gets on the rebound and doubles the lead, 2-0 at halftime. For the underdog, given little chance of reaching their first World Cup when the draw was made for the qualification group, this is the dream scenario because it forces the Italian giants to chase in second half. 10 minutes into second half, a blunder by Northern Ireland's keeper, Norman Oprichard, allows Italy to pull one back. Dino da Costa, a striker from Roma and playing in his only ever national team appearance, mishits the ball, which gently arcs towards Oprichard, who instead of holding onto it, lets the ball drop to the ground in front of da Costa, who forces it over the line. 2-1. For the next 10 plus minutes, it's all Italy. They press hard, and then comes the hinge. Chico Ghiggia is sent off in the second half. I can't stiff on the trigger whether it's an off-ball incident, a kick, a dispute, but the consequence is consistent. Italy, already under pressure, are down to 10 men. It takes a sting out of the attack, and when the final whistle comes, it isn't just a win. It's a rewriting of football hierarchy. Northern Ireland has qualified for their first World Cup finals, and Italy, two-time world champions, are out. It is the first time Italy have failed to qualify for World Cup they've entered. And with the perspective of history, the next time Italy misses a World Cup final, that is in 2018, which is how extreme this moment still looks, even decades later. So Northern Ireland go to the 1958 World Cup in Sweden and reach the quarterfinals. Peter McParland becomes one of the tournament's figures. 5 goals, including 2 against West Germany and 2 in the playoff against Czechoslovakia. The team's captain, Danny Blanchflower, is remembered not only for control but for organization, and in modern retrospectives he's credited with manager Peter Doherty as part of the story of how the defensive wall on free kicks become normalized at the highest level. Northern Ireland eventually run into France in Schistfontein and lose 4-0 in the quarterfinal. But the point remains, this wasn't a fluke qualification, it was the peak of a real team. In Italy? Well, Italy's 1950s are already uneasy. Even the national team is marked by tragedy after the 1949 Superga air disaster that kills the core of Torino, which had heavily supplied the Azzurri. Failure to qualify for 1958 becomes a national humiliation. Not only the losses to Northern Ireland and Portugal sting, there are also a 1-6 loss to Yugoslavia and a 2-3 loss to Austria in the Central European International Cup, the precursor to the European Championships. And the Italian FA undertakes a spring cleaning, including Alfredo Foni, the coach, who loses his post after the failure. But the Diva wound is symbolic. The Azzurri shirt is supposed to represent order, pedigree, and inevitability. Belfast proves none of that qualifies you. It has to be earned, under pressure, in the cold, against a team that believes it can outlast you. So what should we take away from January 15, 1958? 3 points. First, this is one of the great qualification upsets because it attacks status directly. Northern Ireland didn't catch Italy in a one-off friendly. They beat them in a match where Italy only needed a draw, the classic scenario where giants are meant to survive. And second, context matters. The Battle of Belfast wasn't just color, it was part of the psychological environment of this group. Fog, confusion, anger, intimidation, and then a replay that finally became official. World Cup history is often decided by logistics and mood, as much as tactics. And third, reputations don't qualify you, and that truth keeps returning. Italy will go on to win the World Cup twice more and become 4-time champions. But they still have modern scars from qualification failure, because once a giant learns it can be eliminated, it never fully forgets. On this day in 1958, Northern Ireland didn't just beat Italy, they eliminated a 2-time world champion and changed the map of European World Cup qualification. That's all for episode 76 of OTD, when Belfast eliminated Italy on January 15, 1958. If you have family stories about Windsor Park in the 1950s, or if you ever heard how people in Italy talked about that shock, or how Northern Ireland carried that confidence into Sweden, email me at otd@17lawsguy.com. Tips and corrections are always welcome. And please rate this show 5 stars, subscribe. How about telling a friend? Daily Soccer History podcasts need all the help they can get to tilt the algorithm to our advantage. Tomorrow, in episode 77, we go to 1994, the conclusion of the very first J-League season, and Veri Kawasaki's title in the league that tried to reinvent football culture in Japan. See you then.